Radhikaya Tadali Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. So, Pranam to all from Yoga Studio, where we are doing some programs today. Also, a retreat during these days in Washington, D.C., in the U.S., place called Bhakti Yoga DC. So interesting place, meeting some new friends, old friends, all possible varieties. Meeting all of you once again, to my greatest pleasure. So before we go to any questions you may have, any themes, as we have inaugurated last week, we are reading some short excerpt from my forthcoming book, Evolution in Divine Love. So if you allow me to share with you one paragraph, maybe just 2-3 words about it, so we can all participate in this particular project, if you will. It's not only my book, but it's a series of, I will say, I will consider important ideas that can nourish our potential, and many of them have come, of course, as a result of associating with each one of you. So we're all part of the same project. So let's read a short paragraph. I think this will be coming in chapter 3. It says like this. As the Bhakti saint Srila Prabhupada emphasized, insisting on an impeccable, rigid perfection reflects not only impersonalism, but also a form of utopianism. A perfection that denies the potential for continuous growth actually undermines the essence of true perfection and disregards the foundational principle of personal existence. Such an idea is impersonal and utopian, an unrealistic goal that can never be attained. Srila Prabhupada thus cautioned, we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia, because devotees are persons. Therefore, there will always be some lacking. To exist as a person, this is outside of Prabhupada's words, to exist as a person is to experience some form of lack or incompletion. In his own unique way, God, as the ultimate person, also embraces a form of lacking, an eternal yearning for greater perfection in love. This dynamic pursuit is aptly described by Dr. Avi Kapoor. So I will quote something from him. He is also a godbrother of Srila Prabhupada, also known as Adi Keshav Das. It's an interesting quote. He says, fasten your seatbelt. The very nature of God's perfection in love imposes a strange kind of limitation upon him. Truly speaking, love can never be perfect, though it may be limitless. By its very nature, it is imperfect. It is never satisfied with itself. We mean imperfection in that sense. The more love one has, the more one longs for it. Love is essentially dynamic. It is ever growing, ever trying to overreach itself. Because God's love is limitless, his hunger for love is also limitless. To satisfy his limitless hunger, his effort is equally limitless. So that's the section I want to share with you today in the context of the ever-evolvingness of the divine, and how many times our ideas of perfection are very imperfect, very limiting, right? And many times when we play out those ideas, we realize how imperfect they were, even if those were ideas about perfection. So for us, perfection is not a final end point, it's not a dead end, but it's a constant unfolding of further perfection. And that, because that's the paradoxical nature of love, right? Love creates its own thirst. Love is its own necessity. Love is its own reward, as all the mystics will say. But love is its own necessity, because it creates its own necessity in the form of more of the same, quote unquote, the same, which is never the same. More love, more hunger for love. That's an interesting way of speaking about the divine, Krishna. Someone who is in perpetual hunger for that, the ultimate experience of love. There's always more. There's always more. So, divine dissatisfaction, that's the journey we're inviting to. In the context of love. So everything is okay as long as it happens in the context of love. So, anyhow, some thoughts, and I want to honor your raised hands. So far, I'm seeing only one. So whomever has contributions to present today, bring to the table any thoughts, reflections, sharings, quests. You are welcome. But meanwhile, we'll start with the first raised hand coming from New Zealand, I assume. Badra is in New Zealand. Yes. So please, Badra, you can unmute yourself. Welcome.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, everyone, all devotees. I want to share something that's going on in my life at the moment, and it'll cover a few things. I just want to speak for maybe 5 minutes or so about coming from my heart, speaking from my heart. And Maharaj, if you have any comments that afterwards, that will be nice to hear. I'm
Yes.
in trouble at the moment.
I'll turn off my camera 1 second, but I'm still here. I'm
Yeah.
putting something in place, but you continue, please.
Okay. I'm in trouble at the moment with the law. Many years ago, my family and I decided to follow Srila Prabhupada's objective and develop a simple living community in the country, growing food and living apart as much as possible from the mainstream system. And we bought the land in 1994. It's up in the hills in a mountain range in New Zealand, half an hour from any shop or any town at all, quite a way. And the local council allowed us two buildings to be put on it. So we got the permits for those 2 buildings and built them, and then gradually built more buildings. For the first 13 years, there were only 4 buildings on the property. 2 of them consented by council and 2 of them not consented. Now, council flies their aerial helicopters over everywhere, regularly, and takes photographs. So it was definitely on their records that we had non-consented buildings on our property, but nothing was done about it for many years. And finally, gradually, it's been since 1994, what's that? It's coming, it's 30 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've now got 16 buildings on the property, only 2 of them consented. And because to me, the years going by with so many gradually putting the buildings on, council knowing about it, and they also paid visits over the years and saw the buildings and didn't do anything. So I got the message that they were just being lenient with us. So we're way up in the hills, no one can see us. I thought that they were just letting us be. And so we went ahead and built more and more buildings. Most of them are just little cabins and sheds. And we've got, apart from my family, which is myself, my son and his wife and 3 children, we've got 2 other families living here. Long-term friends, like family. In fact, one of them is a 2nd-generation devotee whom I've known since before she was born, and she is married and has 6 children, and the other family living here has 7 children. So there's about 25 people total living at the homestead in our own separate self-contained homes. And now, this is in its 4th year. the council is coming down really heavy on us and trying to penalize us for completely running roughshod over their rules and trying to close the community, trying to close the homestead down, basically. And it's finally come to a jury trial. We've been through 10 court cases over the last 3 years. And just all of last week, all the 5 days of last week, me and the 3 other people who are landowners here, whose names are on the title, I mean. Krishna owns the land, but, you know, our names are on the title. One of them is my son, Dhruva, and his wife, Bella. And so we've all, now is the jury trial. Finally, there's a jury trial happening. And it's been a harrowing week, all day sitting in court with these people who absolutely know nothing about bhakti and just do not. I mean, we don't follow the rules, so we have such a huge audacity. And how did we think we could possibly do that when everyone else follows the rules? And we're being really grilled and exposed, and it's been quite harrowing over these last 5 days, full days from 9:15 in the morning till 5 p.m. at night, Monday to Friday, and it's going on again every day next week as well. So, and then the jury will decide their verdict, whether we're guilty or not. And it's not looking good. The legal system is doing everything it can to bring up legal clauses to combat everything we present in our defense, because we're self-litigating. We decided not to take a lawyer. And anyway, I'll try and keep this very short. I could speak for hours, but I'm keeping it short. So I've been reflecting over these last few days. Why did I think that it was okay to break the rules like this? What aspects of my past and my life made me come to the idea and the mood that it was okay to just blatantly break the secular council's laws and rules? And one thing is, my mother was a rebel herself back in the 50s. She didn't know anything about the Veda or God or anything, but she sensed that something was not right in the world, and she was particularly against the education system. She didn't want her children going to school. She wanted to homeschool us, and she did, and she got into huge trouble for it. Anyway, that's another. So that was created a samskar for me of sort of rebellion. And then as soon as I came to my adult life, there was the hippie movement in the 60s, which was a movement of kind of rebellion against social norms. And then coming to Srila Prabhupada and, you know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his civil resistance. And one thing that I saw on one of your interviews, Maharaj, the other day, which was with a sannyasi, I can't quite remember his name, the associate
Vishnu
of
Maharaj,
our
Bhakti Bhavan Vishnu Maharaj.
Yes. And he was talking about, he mentioned how somebody had asked Srila Prabhupada if it was okay to steal. And Srila Prabhupada said, technically, yes, but you better not get caught. So I remember hearing that. I remember back in the day hearing that Srila Prabhupada had said that. But by the way, nowadays, that's something that I don't agree with. I do not agree with. If Krishna has allotted something to somebody, whether they're a devotee or not, I do not think it's right to take that, even a rubber band or a safety pin. I don't believe in taking. Anyway, that point aside, but all these things these were the things that I came up with in my contemplation as to how I allowed myself to be in the mood that it's just okay to disobey laws. And anyway, now I'm in trouble for it. And I stand to lose my home, my little bhajan kutia that I live in, which is not ticked off by council. And so yeah, I guess that's basically all I wanted to say, but I just want to, I mean, I could say lots more, but that's the essence of the whole thing. And I just, any comments that you have, Maharaj, on any of these things that I've mentioned, I'll be happy to hear.
Thanks for sharing, Bhadra.
Oh, by the way, Maharaj, you've been here. You haven't actually been to our community, but
Yeah,
just
but I've
over the
been
fence.
a few blocks over there, so I know the
Yes,
area.
yeah, very close. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know. Beautiful area, of course. Beautiful place. So yeah, I mean, main thing I will say is, first of all, I appreciate your willingness to be introspective in a situation like this, because sometimes it's not easy to keep introspection in our focus and just be carried away, swept away by this is happening and this may happen potentially, and even victimizing ourselves excessively and perceiving so many enemies outside and universal conspiracies against me, and instead you are basically wondering, questioning yourself, basically, in a healthy way, from what I can say. So I appreciate that, because that's a good symptom. When situations are, especially when situations are complicated, to dare to see, okay, what took me to this situation? How much all of this is, what part of all this is my responsibility? Not from any toxic shame, guilt place, but just trying to make sense of things through the lenses of responsibility. And not, of course, whatever happened in the past, we cannot change that. But we can see some threats. We can, how to say, understand our own trajectory in the line of other influences, like you mentioned, your mom, your own experience with her, hippie movement, and so on. I've had in my teenage years my punk anarchic chapter as well, so I can relate to that. and to that mentality, which of course now, years after, I look back and I can see that was not the all in all, of course, right? That was not the ultimate conclusion. But I can see your main point, if I'm not mistaken, which is also how we, in our particular tradition, and the other day we were recording a podcast with Ravi, a friend, devotee friend, and we were talking about how absolutes can be tricky and problematic, in the sense that you can have an absolute philosophy where God is the owner of everything and I'm worshiping God, therefore that gives me the right to pick the flowers from everyone's garden and steal all the vegetables, and because it all belongs to Krishna ultimately, right? And I'm serving Krishna, so you have no right to tell me anything, basically, right? And we can become so entitled without being fully surrendered to Krishna, right? So we can use a philosophy just basically to avoid responsibility. So we have many things, right? Like, for example, you mentioned, okay, Mahaprabhu, and there has been sometimes some type of parallel. Okay, Mahaprabhu was the first one leading in India civil disobedience movement. And I get the point, no, in regarding his situation with the Kasi, but I wouldn't make a full parallel, in the sense that also Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Dev, he respected some of the sensibilities of time, place, and society at his moment. It was not like he was like absolute sheer rebelliousness and anarchy, and I don't care for anything because I'm God, right? I mean, he had the reasons to do that. If he wanted, like, hey, I'm God, so basically I can do this. Even him, he was God. He honored still some sensibilities as a Brahmin. I don't know, when he went South India at that time, if you were a sannyasi Brahmin, you were expected to eat food cooked by a Brahmin. So when he would visit some of his non-Brahmin associates in South India, still he went for prasad at the house of a Brahmin. So, and again, it's a relative consideration. From the absolute point of view, that's not too important, but he was sensitive to what's the public opinion. Rupa Goswami speaks about loka vichar also. Loka vichar basically means the public opinion, which again should not define us. We should not become like a puppet of the public opinion. Whatever the public opinion thinks, I have to submit to that. I have no opinion of my own. No, but also we are playing along certain rules, certain parameters. We are in a certain society. As long as you are not an avadut living in a cave and you are really in that place internally, there are some relative considerations to take in consideration. Now, Bhishma says in the Bhagavatam, he uses this expression, Desha Kala Vibhagavit. He says that devotees should become Desha Kala Vibhagavit. Desha means like place, Kala means time, and Vibhagavit. Vibhaga will mean here like circumstance. So again, time, place, and circumstance. Bit means to know. Now, you have to be a knower of time, place, and circumstance. So you have to be like tuned in. At least if you are interacting with society on some level, which basically everyone is, one should be aligned with that in a way, of course, that is not compromising our values and ideals, but there's something with that. So I basically, what I can say is that I appreciate your willingness to go through that and to look back at what took you to take certain decisions at certain time of your life, which of course I trust it was in good conscience, in good heart, with good intention. As you and as many of us probably at that age we also may have taken some stances like more absolutistic, and I don't care because I'm doing it for Krishna, so Krishna will protect me. And again, somehow we bring Krishna into the picture, but according to our own ideas, basically. So unconsciously, we are making Krishna subservient to my way of seeing reality, right? So I'm surrendering to Krishna, and then I'm doing certain things. And then Krishna, of course, he's forced to protect me because I surrendered to him. And again, it's not with bad intention, but in time we may look back and say, well, it was not exactly that way, right? Of course, if we are in Golok Vrindavan and everyone is Krishna conscious and everything belongs to Krishna, nobody will argue against that. No problem. Nobody's trespassing anyone's property, but we are not there, right? The perfect community is called Golok Vrindavan, and we are not there. So yeah, I've heard so many wild stories like that. I remember once one devotee told me that they will be in the street and it was basically bullying. It was basically some form of terrorism. People will walk and they will stop them and say, you know what, this street belongs to Krishna, so you have to pay something to walk through it. So that was their way of asking for a donation. And I can imagine just the impression that such people will have from these Hare Krishnas, right? But it was all done in this. Again, I'm not saying they were bad people, these devotees, but it was. You can see how a noble principle, everything belongs to God, given to someone with not much maturity, can end up in some form of terrorism, fundamentalism, and not giving the best. Not only not giving the best image to society, but creating some consequences in the present and future for that person. So, of course, at the same time, I wish you the best in this situation, and hope you are able to stay in that property. But at the same time, I will say, besides whatever will happen, which is not in our control on some point, at least you are. I can appreciate that you are trying to learn your lessons and to hold yourself accountable. That's for me very important, very dignifying, very glorious. In the face of loss, to have the willingness to take responsibility, which was my part in it. That's like, that's good. I can appreciate that. I'm not saying that's everything, the all in all and the end of the story, but to be in a situation where certain things like property, housing, is threatened, and in that context, one is willing to take step into, okay, and how did I contribute to this situation I'm in? Which is my part in it? No? That's very important. It's a big lesson for all of us. So yeah, we should hold ourselves accountable, even if you don't reach a point to losing housing or whatever. That should be a daily concern. Well, how to hold myself accountable, how to be able, as we like to say, responsible, able. No? Any situation comes to see how I'm able to respond to that, right? And Srila Siddhar Maharaj many times will emphasize that, like not put all the blame on your shoulders, but take responsibility for yourself always. Not take responsibility for others, for the part that this belongs to others, take it yourself. Not that, but try to be as responsible as you can for yourself, without being neurotic, without being exaggerated, without being self-flagellating, but also without being half-baked, evasive, escapist, and complacent, right? Because we can also go there and fall into the victim pattern, right? It's not my fault they are doing that to me. And sometimes, again, it's a mixed bag of stuff. You may have done some things, they created something, government dynamics, so local interests, people with their own agenda. I'm sure there are influences there as well. In any given situation, many things are happening. But yeah, at the end of the day, I will say, whether you stay in the house, you lose the housing, or whether we stay wherever we are, we lose. At the end of the day, we will have to be ready to let go everything, basically, and be ready to hold ourselves accountable. No, that's basically our last breath in this life, right? Okay, I have to let go of everything, and I have to present myself to Krishna with full willingness to hold myself accountable, knowing that he is a God made of unconditional love, right? I'm not facing a cruel judge, no, so I'm not saying that, but we have to have all those pieces in the puzzle at place, hopefully at once. And what better way to prepare more and more during this lifetime for that moment, right? Okay. Well, those are the hypothetical scenarios that books like the Srimad Bhagavatam invites us to enter in. No? Parikshit Maharaj, 7 days to live. Okay, that was Parikshit Maharaj. It's not me. No, it's you also, because it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. One of those 7, you'll have to release everything and continue your journey. So it's not about Parikshit Maharaj. It's about you. It's not about Arjuna and Kurukshetra. It's about you entering your battlefield. So yeah, I can appreciate basically your willingness to, in the midst of potential loss, considerable loss, still having the integrity of questioning yourself. Like, okay, what did I do that contributed to this, and how I can take responsibility for that, knowing that by doing that, I'll be doing my part, and I will receive as a result of that whatever I actually need to receive. Because you are doing whatever you actually need to do, apart from showing up to the trial and all that stuff that I can imagine how torturous that is. But at the end of the day, the real question is, yeah, how can I hold myself as accountable as possible? And trusting the mercy department, but also doing my part in being responsible and knowing that's the most dignifying way to walk through life. Whether I lose my housing, whether I'm a millionaire with 3 mansions, that's absolutely irrelevant on one level. As long as I can keep my integrity and I'm not betraying myself, houses come and go. Everything else comes and goes. As long as I can keep a tight embrace to my values and principles and honesty and integrity, I mean, that's the warranty of success. That's real success. Housing, non-housing, fame, infamy, loss, betrayal, gifts, that comes and goes, right? So I will personally choose to emphasize that, and of course, which is for me is the most substantial thing, and I'm so glad that you are able to to be willing to go there, basically. So I don't know if that helps at all, but I appreciate your sharing all that, Bhadraji.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Very, very encouraging words. Actually, I've been taking shelter of many of the shlokas of the second chapter of Gita about not being attached to happiness and distress and loss or gain or victory or defeat, and realizing or getting a little further insight into how these words are so meaningful and relate directly to me, to each of us. They're not just pretty poetic shlokas to learn. They're actually words of deep wisdom from God himself, who for me to really take into my heart at any time, but especially at a time like this. And also tat tenukampam susamik shamano, how I've created this, or else it's Krishna's mercy to teach me some things. So yes, and it's tricky because whilst grasping these concepts in my heart, grasping at these concepts in a more sort of profound way than I ever have, I'm also in court trying to defend myself, you know. So it's almost like I've got to make these two opposites both be real, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, but thank you. I appreciate your words and your encouragement.
Thank you, and all the best in this particular chapter of the journey. Keep us informed. Thank you for sharing.
I will do. I'll put my email address in the chat because I send out this has been going on it's in its fourth year now. And I send out newsletters every now and then to interested devotees friends who want to follow the case. So if anybody wants to follow, just email me and I'll put you on my mailing list.
Okay. Thanks so much, Padre. Okay. Let's invite Darren to unmute himself, and probably that may be the last one for today. Sorry for the brief exchange. Of course, we will have some breakthrough rooms at the end, but in terms of sharing, I have another lecture in 15 minutes or so waiting here. So Darren, please, welcome.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you for your time. And so I'm studying to become a counselor, and I have these two psychologists that are mentors of mine, and they operate from this theory of language called relational frame theory, which is really beautiful. But anyway, they don't appear to have a spiritual background whatsoever. And they said this to me the other day, and they weren't attacking me, or they were just speaking on their own. And they're very sweet people. And they said that this stuff to them is mental masturbation. That's how they put it. They said that this, like going into various theories and reading all of these books, I assume, is like a mental masturbation. And this was just like it made me.
So going through which books? The books they are going through in their training?
I don't know, not so much.
Or the studies that people like us will pursue.
I believe that they would say all of it is because it's all using language in a sense, and this language is cultivating various chemical responses in the body, and therefore people are just getting high off of all of this language. And and that kind of like, how do I respond? I just kind of laughed and like, all right, haha, yeah, and just moved on and to reflect on it deeper later. But I mean, how do you respond to something like that?
So far, which you have been reflected a little while on that I assume because of what you say. So far, which are your
so
reflections?
Yeah, so far I was questioning, like, why is contemplating God the highest to me? Like, or not just to me, but appearingly to others. Like, why is this the highest of pleasures or the highest of tastes, if not because God is real. God is there. God is wanting us to seek him out, wanting us to learn and contemplate his existence, his form, his etc. And then I reflected, like, okay, it may just be the highest for me and not others. And then so I begin to question, like, oh, so yeah, you get into this, like, this kind of loop of, like, oh well, I don't want to dive into relativism or anything like this, and I don't want to follow their empirical ways of how the mind is just like aside, and the only thing that's really substantial or of much value is either where we place our value or the five sense experience. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, lots to say. I have only 10 minutes. Of course, behind a quote like that, and it's not the first time I hear the expression mental masturbation or intellectual masturbation or whatever. I mean, I'm sure, of course, I don't know the people who say that in this case, but there are always assumptions attached to quotes like that, assumptions about words, ideas, God, whatever other people is doing, whatever you are doing. There are generally some assumptions that are many times taken for granted and not rigorously examine themselves. Like for example, a similar thing will be you're a scientist and you become basically a religious fanatic as a scientist, not religious, but you say science is the only way to ascertain reality, and then you end up what's called scientism, which basically projects like an absolute capacity for science to know it all. And how do you know that? Again, how can you prove that? There's no way to prove that, but in the name of science, which by definition is not something that can claim absoluteness on anything, you are projecting this type of thing. So the same can happen in fields like psychology or any other field for that matter. So first that, right? Again, I don't know the people who say that, but many times that can be said from taking certain assumptions and over absolutizing certain views and de-absolutizing some other views. And we can do the same as spiritual people, don't get me wrong, right? We can be fundamentalists and fanatics and speak beyond our experience. So in one sense, that's the form of fanaticism. Like I lack this degree of spiritual experience and I speak as if I had that experience with convincement, with convincing language, while I myself lack that experience. So I wouldn't say that's healthy. So of course ideas are there, and we can really get distracted with ideas. I agree with that. Words are limited. It doesn't mean we should stop using words. Ideas, mental, intellectual reach is it has its reach. It doesn't mean we shouldn't use it, but it means we should know when to surrender those faculties when approaching a higher reality. There are so many verses in our tradition saying that Atasri Krishna Namadi Navabe Graham Indres Mukhe Jivada Swayameva Spuratida. So the senses are there, the mind is there. We have to engage that. But when we are employing them in relation to infinity, they have their limited reach, and we have to be humble and realistic enough to acknowledge our lack of knowledge. That's why someone like Socrates will be the wisest person in Athens, you say? The city in Greece where he was living? Athens? I don't know how you pronounce it. Atenas is in Spanish, that's it. So famously, the oracle will say Socrates is the wisest person there. And he knew, one thing he knew is that this oracle is not lying, but at the same time, he was wise enough to know the limits of his knowledge. So his conclusion to harmonize all that was like, well, I know that I don't know. That's what makes me the wisest person. And I'm saying that in this context, right? Like some people have opinions and things and ideas or whatever, mental masturbation, whatever you want to call it. But that's all from a framework of their own set of assumptions. Or as you were saying, some people will take a more, so to say, postmodern stance where there's no inherent meaning and purpose to reality, and you just ascribe it, you project it, and that's it. That's you are the creator of your perception, and there's nothing beyond that. So again, that's an assumption. That may be a contemporary cosmovision viewpoint that many people embrace, but that doesn't mean that you have proved that that's the case, right? Or sometimes, again, it's only what the mind and the senses can perceive. That's reality. How do you know? No. Okay, if you feel that, I won't force you to think otherwise, but don't come to me trying to convince me that only what you can perceive with your senses is the only true thing, because you yourself cannot prove that. So you follow my point? So at the end of the day, of course, it's all about experience. So if someone lacks certain experience, like I always recall this famous question that they asked Carl Jung, right? Do you believe in God? And he said, no, I do not believe in God. I know he exists. He made the difference. It's not about believing in someone. It's having an experience of that person that is undeniable enough that I don't need to believe. I don't need to believe in God. That doesn't make me an atheist by me saying that, right? If I tell you I don't need to believe in God, that doesn't mean that God does not exist. On the contrary, that means I know he exists, so I don't need to believe in him. So we have so many beliefs, including us many times, assumptions, prejudices, that things that we take for granted without us having an experience of that. But if you have had some experience of the divine, and I've had it, and that doesn't make me better, it's not my own merit, it's just, let's call it grace, for lack of a better word, and you come to me and try to convince me that that's not true, that I was just overstimulated. Well, I was not under any substance in that moment, and things like that. So if you lack that experience, I can understand it, but you cannot impose upon me having to deny my own experience because you lack the experience that I had. And the actual question is, okay, what it takes to have such an experience. No? Okay, I may not have this and that experience, but if is there a way to get closer to this type of experiences? What does it take if you want to have the experience? So all this to say, probably the best answer is no answer at all, because sometimes the other person is not interested in an alternative viewpoint from the one they are already entertaining. I don't know in this case of your peers, so to say, in the counseling study, because sometimes, again, people is not ready or interested or open to open a conversation that goes in a different direction than their own paradigm. So I won't lose my time trying to convince you of my own experience or my own stuff. If you are not interested in that, while I will be imposing myself on your lack of interest, so to say. No, let's save time to each other. Let's be generous to each other. You don't care for my inner experience. That's fine. I'm not taking it personal. You're not having anything against me. And I'm not in any need of trying to convert you to my experience, because that that wouldn't speak so well about my experience, right? If my experience is real, I don't think I will feel drawn to convert people. No, my experience will speak for itself in that case, right? I don't have to feel the push to, you have to think like me, you have to agree with me. So this type of thing can happen from both sides. Again, you can be the religious, spiritual person that tries to impose that on others, or you can be the skeptic, atheist, agnostic, psychologist, whatever maybe the label, than trying to impose their stuff on others. And at the end of the day, both are doing the same thing instead of addressing each other from an open place, acknowledging who each other is, meeting them where they are at, and developing the conversation from that place. But that requires genuine interest from each other to meet the other person where they are at. And not everyone has the interest. Not everyone is willing to take the time to really meet you where you are in a conversation, especially if you do not entertain a similar paradigm of life that I entertain. Most people is like, I don't care. And I'm not condemning them. Again, we have 24 hours per day. So everyone is trying to make the best use of their time. But just I'm saying, in order to engage in a fruitful exchange, that it doesn't become a debate and an ego-driven thing about who defeats each other and who is right and how do I convince you. There has to be a very honest and open acknowledgement of the person as a person, where they're at, a genuine empathy in traveling to meet the person there, and vice versa. It has to be always reciprocal. If not, it's one-sided, and it's unsustainable. So if that's not there, okay, that's not there. I don't need to defeat their mental masturbation argument. And I don't need to be defeated by it either, by me not saying anything in response, so to say. So we can always try to understand from which place everyone is coming, because again, behind every word there is some history in the background. Every word, as I think Franz Kafka will say, every judgment, I mean, every one of us, he will say, behind all of our opinions, there is some history. In other words, we bring with our own ways of seeing life, our own experiences and our own filters. So he will conclude, behind every opinion is a confession, he will say. In other words, when someone is saying something about someone, they are indirectly, without them maybe wanting to do that, they are confessing. They are showing where they are actually. They are showing their filters, their biases, their assumptions, because most people, at least, they see the world through their own lenses. That's what the Vedas say, Atmavan Manjati Jagat, right? How I see the world outside according to my world inside. So that's why it's so important to cultivate what we will call equanimity and unbiased view, learn to be present, learn to be empathic, learn not to be driven by our own beliefs. Again, this is not about believing. It's about having genuine direct experience. Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita 9.2. Pratyaksha Bhagamam. Bhakti can be understood by personal experience, not by believing. You don't need just to subscribe to a set of dogma that you have no clue what's that about. You need to enter into an undeniable experience. And we can share that with those who have some experience of that, and with those who do not have. It's understandable that they may even question that, especially because in the name of spirituality and religion, so much the opposite has been done in the name of that. So we can have some understanding of those who choose to see, for example, entertaining ideas about God as mental masturbation. It's not that it is that, but yeah, 2 minutes and I'm closing. But yeah, there is a danger also on ending up just fascinated by ideas and thinking and trying to capture the divine in ideas. And as Richard Rohr would say, our ideas about God are not the same as God. Do not equate God. So that's another way of humbling our own situation. We speak, we use words, we think, we use thoughts, but at the end of the day, God transcends them all. And we have to be open to release all that and to have a direct experience of what's beyond words, beyond thoughts. Adokshaya, name of Krishna, who lies beyond all that. Anyhow, I don't know if that helps, makes some sense, but I'm being called over here that the next class is waiting. I'm sorry that I'm not streaming live because it's kind of a private retreat here, so that's not the system this time, but happy to have been sharing with you now. Sri Satchidananda Guru Hari Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta